welcome to our first episode of Seen on the Small Screen, where my name is Becky.
And my name is Jake. And As Seen on the Small Screen is a podcast dedicated to reviews of made-for-TV movies of today and of yesteryear.
And today, we are starting with a movie that, even though it started on a big screen, it was like a test run on a big screen. It was only on the big screen for maybe a week.
Yeah. What we're going to be doing today is the first episode in the 1970s series Buck Rogers. After the major success that Star Wars had, there were a few movie studios that were interested in exploring some of the classic science fiction titles, as well as experimenting with a few of their own. That's where you got television series like Battlestar Galactica, for example. The Incredible Hulk, that didn't quite come on the heels of Star Wars. That was a little bit later. All Battlestar Galactica, The Incredible Hulk, and also Buck Rogers had one thing in common, in that even though they're recognized today as television series, they actually got their start as motion pictures. What a studio would do in those days to gauge if there was any interest in a program or an idea, they would actually do a slightly better version of the property, basically a slightly better television episode that they would then release in the theaters.
Yes, and so Buck Rogers, the first episode, was released in movie theaters as kind of a test.
Obviously, did well. Grossed enough in the theaters that Universal decided to go ahead and make a TV series out of it. And so all they did was basically take that movie, and they cut it into two parts. And that became the pilot show of the series.
Yes, and so that's what we're going to talk about.
And even though this particular episode started out technically on the big screen, ultimately the goal was to have it on television. And so because that was kind of the end game that the studio executives at Universal were after. That's why
it fits with what we're doing right now.
So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with the episode.
So yes, the episode, as Jake mentioned, is divided into two parts. It is called The Awakening, parts 1 and 2.
Put on your cars, your backgammon boards. Lucky Buck is back.
Captain Buck Rogers, it appears you have returned to Earth 504 years later.
Buck Rogers, the world's first and greatest space hero. The trip of your life, 500 years from today. Buck Rogers in the 25th century, rated PG.
Now playing the castle in 5 Studio 10s and 20s.
We begin with a narration that sounds like Morgan Freeman.
Yeah.
Yes, if Morgan Freeman was a white dude, it sounds kind of like
it would be this
what
guy.
He would be. And he goes through telling the story of Buck Rogers.
Yes, I suppose we could very lamely try to tell you what happens. Personally, I think it would be just easier to have him go ahead and do it.
In the year 1987, at the John F. Kennedy Space Center, NASA launched the last of America's deep space probes. The payload, perched on the nose cone of the Massey rocket, was a one-man exploration vessel, Ranger 3. Aboard this compact starship, a lone astronaut, Captain William Buck Rogers, was to experience cosmic forces beyond all comprehension. An awesome brush with death. In the wink of an eye, his life support systems were frozen by temperatures beyond imagination. Ranger 3 was blown out of its planned trajectory into an orbit 1,000 times more vast. an orbit which was to return the ship full circle to its point of origin, its Mother Earth, not in 5 months, but in 500 years. For 500 years, Buck Rogers drifted through a world in which reality and fantasy merged into a timeless dream.
I'm just going to say this. That guy, if he was still around, and sadly I know that he's actually passed on, but I would seriously, if that guy were still around, I would totally pay him money, stand and like make recordings of like the most mundane things, like, you know, reading like IRS tax code book.
Oh yeah, just have him narrate your life.
Yeah. Jake
pulls out his car keys and fiddles to find the right fit for his car door.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if ever I wanted a guy to follow me around and narrate the incredibly dull high points of my life, then that would definitely be it.
And then while you are listening to this, you have to picture a scantily dressed woman who's in a very, very skimpy space outfit. And she is lying on stage, and you just see her posing in various positions. Not necessarily sultry positions, and don't let your brain go super dirty. She's just lying on stage in various positions in basically a space bikini while we listen to the intro song.
Yes, the standard. Man, what's the best way to describe the opening? It's kind of like a really, really low budget, like 007 opener, really.
Yeah, with the woman who's in her space bikini almost trying to be Charlie's Angels by striking poses at the same time that she's almost trying to be, I wouldn't say seductive. I would say just laying around watching Saturday morning cartoons.
Actually, doing some research, I did find out that the actress that did all that dancing and stuff was actually Erin Gray, the female lead in the show. And I guess she said that, well, because in the opening, what kind of makes it weird is they have this gigantic like neon sign, like white neon sign that says Buck Rogers. And so in a lot of scenes, she's just like sliding around like off of the letters, and in some shots she's like stretching, prostrating herself across some of the other letters in the name. And yeah, just very, very odd. Again, kind of quasi 007 intro. Yeah, just odd. And I guess according to what she said, it was incredibly hot and incredibly uncomfortable to do all of that weird posing.
Yeah, I burned my hands trying to change a light bulb that's been on for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Think of how many takes she had to do to pull that off.
And now we know why she was squirming around all over the stage as she was trying to strike a pose.
So I want to say a few words as well, since we're on the subject, about the opening theme. So the opening theme song to Buck Rogers is, and actually the music that they play in the opening is basically what they play a souped up tempoed version of that song in the actual television series to begin with. But then at the end, the ending theme is actually kind of closer to the theme that you hear at the beginning of this episode. It's very, very slowed down. Almost want to say it's almost approaching like ballad territory.
Yeah,
really, because you got just like, you know, the mellow guitar just kind of playing out the tune.
Yeah, and it almost sounds like it should be something that you're singing in Sunday school.
Yeah, I'll make a standing bet to anyone out there: if you were to take the ending theme to Buck Rogers and were to just play it on a piano, you probably couldn't distinguish that between your regular like kids like Sunday school music.
So, moving into the actual episode.
So yes, we fast forward 500 years. Buck Rogers hasn't aged a day, and yeah, he really looks man, what's the best way to describe it? Okay, they do a few shots of the inside of his cockpit. And he looks actually looks like a different person. I'm going to go out on a limb. He kind of looks like Bill Murray under all the weird frozen ice makeup that they put on his face.
Yeah.
So
if you took Bill Murray and kind of plastered his face with an ice gun.
Yeah, it's what he kind of looks like.
And so he's floating in space for 500 years, and then his ship is recovered. He is still living, but he's recovered by a fleet of enemy ships.
But you don't know that they're enemy ships.
Yes, you don't know that they're enemy ships yet. So
they're just ships.
Yes. But they're ships on a peacekeeping mission. But you can also assume that they are enemy ships because they're accompanied by bad guy music.
Oh yeah.
That's what tips me off that they're bad guys, because you get the instant bad guy music. But so yes, you know or you suspect that they are enemy ships because you get the distinctive music in a minor key that says it is bad guy music.
We're the bad guys. Well, I mean, you can't jump to conclusions. I mean, because he's taken aboard the flagship, which is called the Draconia, which is run by two individuals. One individual by the name of Princess Ardala, and the other a gentleman by the name of General Kane.
Very science fiction-y sounding.
So anyway, I guess Princess Ardala has an odd bucket list idea. She apparently is interested in, or wants to know what a 500-year-old man looks like.
So yes, what did men look like 500 years ago?
So yes, you're introduced to Kane, Ardala. Oh, and of course there's Ardala's arch henchman, Tigerman. And I'm sorry, I'm just going to say this up front. Big Tigerman fan. Love the tiger, love the man. Tigerman is awesome.
Yes. How can you not love Tigerman?
Well, yeah, I mean, he just stands there and does nothing, but he looks totally...
But he's menacing at the same time.
Yeah. It's like, it's like the big German guy in Raiders of the Lost Ark. When he just shows up, you're like, yeah, this guy's gonna be trouble. But the great thing about Buck Rogers, Tigerman is introduced in the very beginning of the movie. For the whole thing, he's just, scenery. But in the back of your mind, this guy is going to play a really important role at some point in the movie.
He's the muscle. He's the enforcer. So, yes, Buck is found, and he is brought aboard the ship, the Draconian.
And then after meeting Buck Rogers back, Kane and Ardala have a conversation where Kane has this plan where he wants to use Captain Rogers for something good, obviously, because remember these are the good guys that we're dealing with.
Yes, he was not brought aboard the enemy ship. He was just found among them.
Yes. And so anyway, they decide to fix his ship up and send him back to Earth because that's where obviously Captain Rogers was wanting to go. So they do. They launch his ship into space, and yeah, he makes a face, a really funny face.
He makes a face that I can only imagine, where it's like you sit on a bidet and suddenly realize it's ice water when you weren't expecting ice water.
To me, it's like the singer in Ye Standard Choir who's just trying to get that perfect O sound. Get that your mouth to almost get into like a perfect circular formation. And that's kind of the expression he's got. And we could say a few other things, but I'm not, because
So yes, after he is launched from the Draconian to head to Earth, he gets to Earth.
Yes. The plan, the over the table, nothing wrong with it plan, is to send him to Earth so that they can figure out the channel that the Earth ships use. Because apparently Earth is surrounded by this gigantic force field. And the only way to actually get down to Earth is through a very, very
specific channels.
So
it's like having to go through an open door.
Yeah, it's hidden.
And if you don't know where it is, Too bad, so sad you can't find it.
So the idea is they want to send Captain Rogers' ship through that channel so they can figure out the where the opening is. Of course, that knowing that is not going to avail them anything, because they're on a diplomatic mission, and they would obviously have absolutely no interest in wanting to know secret military intelligence.
They would not want to know anything of that.
Of that nature.
All.
Yes. Definitely not.
All set to go, Twiggy?
It's Buck Rogers. He's out of this world. Put on your cars, your backgammon boards. Lucky Buck is back. The one and only genuine American space hero, loved for generations. He's Buck Rogers.
What a guy.
Journey to the stars with Buck Rogers.
Buck Rogers, weeknights at 6 here on Channel 9.
Okay,
so he gets to Earth.
He does.
And
he starts singing.
Because he is this 500-year-old man on a 500-year-old spaceship.
It's still working pretty good, I might add.
It is still working pretty good. All things considered, after they fixed it up.
Yeah.
He starts singing, and he ends up in an institution, quote unquote. It's kind of like an institution, where it reminds me of, he's put into a mental institution where he's got robots taking care of him.
Yeah. And the Earthlings in the 25th century, apparently fashions in the 25th century went to people dressed in white uniforms with like white uniforms with gay pride armbands.
Yes, because they have rainbow armbands on their white uniforms.
So it's nice to know that even in the far off year of 25 something,
the pride movement has remained strong.
Oh yeah, as a matter of fact, from the looks of it, it's pretty much universal at this point.
Yes, and so while in this institution, Buck is cared for by a handful of human beings, but in large part he meets Tweaky,
yes,
the robot, and Dr. Theopolis, another robot, who are both programmed to help Buck and to heal him according to the standards of the day. So
Tweaky, anyone who's familiar with Buck Rogers, the television show Buck Rogers, definitely knows about Tweaky. He kind of became the icon of the show, and I mean, yeah,
you get the iconic sound that Tweaky makes.
Yes, voiced by Mel Blanc, the voice of Bugs Bunny, host of other characters from the Looney Tunes, from Hanna-Barbera. I mean, yeah, this guy made his career doing hundreds and hundreds of different and varied cartoon voices.
And on Buck Rogers, he made himself a name by saying, "Beady, beady, 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 beady."
Yep. Followed by some kind of sarcastic remark.
I think I will have a drink now.
Although the sarcastic remarks didn't start coming until later on in the television show. The original idea behind Tweaky was that Mel Blanc was only going to say the beady beady beaties, which were kind of supposed to be the language of like the robot, and then Theopolis, which was the robot that Tweaky had around his neck, was basically supposed to interpret.
Was his translator.
Yeah. But in the end, they kind of scrapped that idea, and I personally think that was a good move.
Yes. So, because, we all know that Google Translate has some issues if you use it inappropriately. So Theopolis was going to be the original Google Translate.
Yes, the Alexa of the 25th century, kind of.
Yes.
Anyway, since we're talking about him, so Dr. Theopolis, not much to say about him. He has a pleasing voice. He's kind of a HAL 9000 wannabe, I'm going to say.
Yes, and he's an AI that's been loaded into like a headlight for a motorcycle.
Yeah.
That then hangs on a chain around Tweaky's neck.
And inside the headlight, you have a whole bunch of flashing lights that, well, I'll come out and say it. It kind of looks like a Lite-Brite assembly. So Yeah, it's a hokey effect, but hey, you know,
it's hokey, but it's
lovable.
awesome.
So anyway, those are the robots. Also, Buck runs into a few humans. Dr. Hewer, who I guess is an administrator. I don't know. I think he might have been the person in charge of the institution that Buck was sent to.
Yeah,
I don't know.
he's not.
Really
His role isn't completely defined in this first
Yeah.
episode, in either one of these first two episodes, because he is the human there, and you would assume he is the doctor who is caring for Buck, but that's not true because the doctor who is actually caring for Buck is Dr. Theopolis.
Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, you have Colonel Wilma Deering, who is the head of the Earth Defense Forces, and is also the one that escorts Captain Rogers' ship when he first arrives in Earth space.
And you immediately then run into the moral of a story. It's not the moral of the story, but you run into a moral of the idea of robots will be the ones to save the world, as humans are too dumb and too stubborn to do it for themselves.
Yeah, so apparently Buck learns the backstory of what's happened over 500 years is that humans have essentially destroyed them or almost destroyed themselves in some kind of global conflict / disaster.
And robots came to the rescue and fixed everything that the humans screwed up.
And so because of that, humans can't trust themselves to do anything important. So they've just kind of given up and given all their thinking over to robots. Which, I don't know, in today's day and age, I'll confess, it's a little prophetic. You know, slowly giving ourselves over to machines, just letting them do the work for the most part.
And in the meantime, while Buck is hearing all of this, he either has the world's greatest poker face, or he has absolutely zero clue about what anybody is saying. So he's just got a very blank, non-responsive look on his face.
That much I know. Tell me what I don't know.
Well, if preliminary data holds up, it appears you have returned to Earth 504 years later. You are now in the 25th century.
Yeah. It's either that or it's just mediocre acting. I mean, technically, you find out later on it's because he's in shock. But...
And that makes sense.
It makes sense.
That does make sense.
Still, again, you know, much like the O face, just the look that Gil Gerard has, it's just, it's priceless.
And, I mean, come on, you've been frozen for 500 years, and now all of a sudden you find out robots are more powerful than humans, and humans are stupid. So, you know, or humans are too dumb to be able to do things for themselves. So you have to have robots.
Exactly. Robots,
you know.
AI.
I mean, you'd be in shock.
Yeah.
I'd be in shock.
Buck Rogers, he's learned the truth of what's happened to him.
What has happened to Earth?
Yes. So Buck Rogers has learned the truth of what has happened to Earth. And does he believe it?
No.
He does not.
Why would he believe it?
Exactly. It's preposterous. I mean, a world that's been taken over by, you know, machines, and it's ridiculous. It's poppycock.
And robots are more trustworthy than humans? Nah. Why would he believe that?
Exactly.
So logically, the next step is to venture out on his own, out into the ruins.
Exactly. Not bothering to take any cool, you know, futuristic weapons, no vehicles. Not even going to trust in any of that futuristic technology. Nope, he's just going to go out on his own with his two new robot buds.
Who insist on joining him.
For some reason.
For some reason. Even though once they get out into the ruins, Tweaky is basically, I'm very sure he is swearing up a storm at Buck, and Dr. Theopolis, or Theo, gives us the watered-down, Disney-fied version, simply saying that there's some bad dudes that live out in the ruins. And the ruins are the ruins of whatever city happened to be outside of their current city, their current center of civilization.
Exactly. The city that Buck Rogers is taken to is the city of New Chicago, named because it is close to the ruins of an older city that happens to have the same name. Although in the television, or in the episode, the ruins are basically just a bunch of lovely matte paintings that someone, threw together.
Yeah. Blocks of styrofoam.
Yeah. Old movie sets, the old movie sets where they film it at night and they just throw like a bunch of garbage and like weeds and stuff that give it a look of, oh well, these are obviously ruins.
It's got to be the old rundown look. Yes. Buck is out in the ruins.
And then I'm pretty
sure.
And then
night comes along.
Yes, night comes along, and then I'm pretty sure he kind of walks onto the set of the Omega Man, because all of a sudden you see all of the beings that that Tweaky was a little nervous about a few scenes before.
Because thanks to Theo, they're going to be after his gold, but we really don't know what they plan to do with Tweaky, and we don't want to know, apparently. Which
Tweaky knows. He's told us in vivid detail what they're going to do to him, but
yes, but Theo decided to, smurf it out just a little bit, so we wouldn't have that traumatic event to have to overcome. So I think that was pretty generous of Theo to do that.
Oh yes. Very, very generous.
But yes, we have absolutely no possible way of knowing how these masked figures plan on violating Tweaky.
So it's just left to our imagination. And it's probably a good idea that it is.
Yes.
Once they realize that they're being slowly surrounded, Buck and company do the only thing that seems sensible, and that is run into a graveyard.
Yes. That's the most logical thing. I mean, why would you not run into a graveyard?
Well, okay. In this case, it's because Buck is bound and determined that if he's truly 500 years in the future, well, obviously there have to be some gravestones somewhere that have the names of, his parents, his family. That's why they wind up there. Kind of lame, but yeah, that's...
It's a plot device.
That's where the plot takes us. And, of course, once he makes the discovery that he is, in fact, 500 years in the future, well, it's too late. They're then surrounded by their...
by the mutants.
Pursuers mutants. Basically, you can think of them as very low-budget Tusken Raiders. So, a little bit of Tusken Raiders, a little bit of Night of the Living Dead. Not a whole lot else.
Yeah. And Theo, who was ever the optimist, has now suddenly become ever the pessimist.
Yes, but never fear, friends. Just before things get too incredibly tense for our heroes, a band of soldiers comes plowing on in, and at their head, of course, is Wilma Deering. She scolds Buck for taking off on his own. Buck really doesn't care. He decides he's going to go off again. And, of course, Wilma Deering takes out a pistol and stuns him.
Yes.
Which, oddly enough, brings up one of the more glaring plot holes in this particular episode. Because, apparently, a couple of scenes before Buck decided to make this little trip, he has a conversation with Wilma, where he confesses to Wilma he's planning on going to these ruins. Wilma, of course, is not very happy and says that Buck needs to stay where he's at. Buck, of course, being Buck, says, I'm not doing what you say, I'm going anyway, and basically storms off.
You're not the boss of me.
Yeah. And storms off. Obviously intent on doing what he said he was going to do. So at that point, if I were Colonel Deering, I would be like, he's obviously going to go out and do the thing that I told him not to. Well, I guess I should take out my gun and...
just stop him from doing what I told him not to do to begin with, but if she did that, then we wouldn't have a movie.
I guess. Nope, all she does is just stare at him as he walks out. And so you're left wondering, if your whole intent was to stop him, why didn't you just pull your gun and then, get it over with? I mean, personally,
Because there wouldn't be a movie.
Well, there wouldn't have been that fun-loving subplot that you really could have done without. But
Yeah.
In addition to everything else, they discover that there's a transmitter on Captain Rogers' ship. And so, after Buck Rogers is recovered, he is also put on trial.
Yes, and it basically takes Theo defending him to say he's a human, and so he really didn't know what he was doing.
Exactly. So again, we should point out that in this future world, everything is run by machines. Apparently, that also includes the legal system, because Buck is put on trial in front of the Lite-Brite tribunal.
Yes, and so it then falls on Buck's shoulders to prove that the Draconian ship is armed, to prove that he did not have any ill intent, and to basically prove that he was an old man who didn't know what was going on.
Yeah. Obviously, in spite of Dr. Theo's incredibly brilliant defense, the Alexa Council decides that he's guilty anyway. So they sentence him, and Buck Rogers is convicted and sentenced to die.
Yes, and the only way he can avoid dying is proving that the Draconian ship is armed.
Exactly. Because Buck has said that, these Draconians, they're up to no good. I think they're the ones that put this transmitter on my ship. And Wilma, kind of up to the trial, has been sort of not really believing him. But for whatever reason, she decides to kind of stick her neck out on the line and see if Buck's story is true. So they go up to the Draconian ship. There's a bit of a... They talk for a bit, and actually all that stuff's kind of boring. There's basically a space battle. That's kind of what the end-all result is.
Leads to a space battle.
And because the Draconis is attacked by pirates, by pirate vessels. And so all of the Earth defense ships, all of the Earth defense people leap into their spaceships to go and defend the Draconis, because, of course, the Draconis has no weapons and is on a total peacekeeping mission of no ill intent.
Unquote. Yes.
So you find out that, again, we are living in the machine-fueled future. So all of the human ships are piloted by computers, not people. In which case you would wonder, well, if that's the case, why do you need the people inside the ships to begin with?
Couldn't you just scan the ships and see if there's some kind of weaponry on there with their computers? I mean... why do you need the humans?
Oh, yes.
And that's actually, you run into that because, humans can't overcome the computers. So the humans are the expendable ones. They've all got kind of big red shirts on. Okay, they don't actually have red shirts in the movie, but, they might as well.
Colonel Deering, she orders Buck Rogers to go on full autopilot to get blown up by pirates. Buck obviously thinks that's not a good idea, so he just keeps his controls on manual. And, obviously in true 1970s fashion, you find out that human reflexes are better than, super advanced AI units.
Yes. And the humans, the humans end up beating the computers. Because of experience.
The pilots in the pirate ships, they obviously are not using computers.
Yes. Lo and behold, humans then beat the computers because humans have experience and computers do not.
I guess so. In spite of the fact that computers have had 500, nearly 200, maybe 300 years of
programming to be able to refer to? Yeah.
Apparently that's no match for, 5 to 10 years of, good old-fashioned human ingenuity. Yeah, in the end, it's a typical space battle. Some human red shirts die. The tides turn. Buck blows up a whole bunch of ships, and
yeah.
He's a hero after that. They suddenly don't want to kill him.
Right.
Buck Rogers in the 25th Century is brought to you tonight in part by
the antiperspirants you can be sure of. Sure roll-on and sure spray.
The story has progressed. Space battle is over.
That later that night there's a party.
Later that night there is a party.
Because the humans' good friends, the Draconians, have arrived and they want to visit Earth.
But yes, we have to remember it was not the Draconian ships that they had to fight against.
Yes.
It was not the Draconian ships. It was another group of ships.
These were pirate ships. Completely unaffiliated with
the... Quote unquote, they are completely unaffiliated. They have nothing to do with the Draconians. So the Draconians invite the humans and the humans' computers to celebrate with them in a big party and a dance. And we know that the Draconians are definitely from a faraway place because they're dressed exotically, right? I mean, the way that they're dressed in that, I think that the Draconians were the super rich people in the Hunger Games that dressed in outlandish costumes and stuff. I really think they were.
Probably. It certainly would explain...
Or at least their ancestors.
Yeah.
Maybe.
It certainly would explain the lovely outfit that Princess Ardala's wearing.
Yes. So,
and as a matter of fact...
Explain her outfit.
Oh, well, actually, I think our good friend Captain Buck Rogers can explain it.
I confess, I thought the princess had you beguiled.
Well, I will say she had the nicest set of horns at the ball.
Yes, it was an attractive hat.
And so, in the party, we then have a dance scene with weird, slow group dance music. It's not just a slow dance. It's a slow dance for a group.
Yes. And to kind of describe the outfits these dancers are wearing, yeah, apparently they have a whole bunch of like mini disco balls that are pasted to the tops of their hands that they kind of use while they dance.
So 500 years in the future, that new age discotheque stuff comes back.
Exactly. Much like how in the Star Trek series in the 23rd century, apparently people start using rear projection television screens for everything. Oh yes, and then speaking of music and dancing, yeah, apparently the dance that these people do is very weird, it's almost like they kind of swipe left a little bit, and then they start swiping right a little bit, and they kind of do that over and over again.
It's a precursor since it's 500 years in the future,
yeah,
it's a postcursor, it's a descendant of Tinder or Bumble or any one of those online dating app things.
Exactly. It's not enough to bring out your phone to do the swiping. Now you have to do it
physically.
Yes, you have to do it kinesthetically with your whole body. Anyway, so yeah, like we said, Princess Ardala shows up and is watching this whole affair. Buck and Tweaky go and visit the princess, and yeah, there's some banter, which is kind of boring. But for the most part, you figure out that, among other things, apparently Tweaky's hormones decide to kick in.
What a body.
Yes. Tweaky's hormones decide to kick in, and I'm very sure that he goes, like, very far down the potty mouth road. Becomes just a very dirty little robot.
Yes, he does.
But again, we get the smurfed out version from Theo. But Tweaky does throw in a couple of English phrases, not just the beady beaties.
Yeah.
He throws in a couple of English phrases that say that, his little robot hormones have kicked in.
Let's see. Okay, so it's at that point that after the jolly banter between the good princess is over, our good friend Captain Buck Rogers decides that this futuristic music doesn't really suit his style. So he goes up to the Applejack DJ is the best way I can describe this guy, and yeah, requests a change of music. Basically, they switch the music from just new age discotheque to just total disco.
It's flat out disco.
Might
as well be the Bee Gees at this point.
Yeah, exactly. It is disco music, pure and simple. And then, a fun, if not a little awkward, dancing number follows, wherein Tweaky, Buck, and Ardala shake their funky stuff.
Yeah. They shake their funky white stuff or metallic stuff. Whatever you might want to call it.
Yeah. So, while the dance is going on, Colonel Deering apparently succumbs to a slight fit of jealousy and wanders away in disgust from the dance scene. Buck realizes this, goes after Deering, and they have a very interesting conversation, followed by a snog.
Yes. They get a good old-fashioned makeout going on.
Because you knew it was coming. I mean, all of that tension had to be going somewhere. And oddly enough, they decided to film this scene in front of a triforce.
Yes. Interesting. Which,
if anyone knows anything about the Legend of Zelda series, Buck Rogers came out a good full 8 to 10 years before Legend of Zelda was on the scene. So I can only chalk this up as just a weird...
time travel exists, people.
Yes, apparently it does. I think I'm kidding. I'm not. It is a triforce. The triangle with it's a giant triangle with 3 triangles inside. The giant triangle is a triforce.
So yes, they have their wonderful snog.
Yep, and Buck Rogers decides...
It stops there though, because got to keep things above board.
Exactly. Well, they do it very tastefully because Buck Rogers, he ends the conversation with a dirty joke reminiscent of James Bond.
Like to go someplace?
I'm not up to that yet. I've been out of it for quite a while. 500 years. I've got to go easy on re-entry.
Anyway, he uses that as an excuse to jump into his spaceship and go to the starship Draconis so that he can pretend to ally himself with Princess Ardala, because he wants to get to the bottom of these Draconians and their sneaky ways.
Because he hasn't been able to get past the sinking suspicion that the Draconians are doing something underhanded, no matter how much they say they're above board and they are the allies.
By the by, Ardala is totally on this deal. She's become quite enamored of the good captain. And so, they're basically they're in her quarters. And she's wanting something, and Buck is promising something, but instead he just decides he's going to give her some kind of funny, roofy drink.
Yes, this is where Buck, in order to escape the princess's wiles, he drugs her so that he can get away.
Yes.
So it's kind of like Bill Cosby in reverse. Sort of. He drugs her and then runs away. He doesn't do anything to her in the process. At which point in time, Buck he's escaped from the princess, so she can no longer try to seduce him into doing her bidding. However G-rated that might be.
Exactly. Oh, and in this scene as well, you find out that the Draconis' guards are actually samurai warriors with gigantic red bands on their on their uniforms. Yeah, there seems to be a running theme in the future wherein people have to wear armbands to either identify themselves.
You identify what group you fit with by what armband you wear.
Yeah. So I guess
sort of makes sense, right?
Lovers of armbands, apparently you come back in a crazy way.
You
in a few hundred years. You just gotta wait.
You wear your heart on your sleeve. It's just now you wear your affiliations on your sleeve.
Yes. So Buck slips into the ship hangar of the Draconis, and surprise, surprise, you find out that all of those pirate ships that they used to attack the Draconis earlier were actually Draconian ships.
No.
Yes. The bad guy music was telling the truth all along, and we just refused to see the truth. But now we know the truth, and that is that the Draconis is in fact not the diplomatic ship of peace and mercy that we were all hoping it would be. Nope, it is in fact a fully armed warship with a fleet of smaller ships that is intent on using the knowledge of where the gap in Earth's force field is to, basically they're going to conquer the Earth with their wonderful army. So,
yes.
Buck decides he's not going to stand for that. So he decides, again, to start sabotaging all of the Draconian ships. And he does so by basically stealing missiles that are being loaded into the ships and decides to put them into the tailpipes of the spaceships before they're launched off. And again,
because that means that they're going to be fired out of the tailpipes at the ships that the pirate ships are sitting in.
Basically means that the pirate ships explode
on impact. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. As they're taking off,
they explode upon starting.
And this is where you have to
suspend your disbelief
just a little bit, because we're living in a super futuristic society. You think that somewhere there'd be some kind of sensor or something to say, oh, hey, there's an incredibly large incendiary device that's in this part of the ship that's going to easily make it blow up. Maybe we should not launch our fighters and figure out what's going on.
The Starfighter and Buck Rogers.
Okay, Kane, get ready to fight.
Meet Kane and the Draconian Marauder.
You'll never catch me.
Planes need assembly. Each plane and action figure sold separately. There's Twiki.
Get the robot.
You can pretend he's being chased by Draco, Tigerman, and the Draconian Guard.
Calling Buck Rogers. Help!
Buck Rogers, Twiki, Draco, and Tigerman. Each sold separately by Mego.
But apparently Buck is able to do this without even being noticed, and the end result is that when the human fighters, led by Wilma Deering, show up and start attacking the Draconis warship, when the Draconians start launching their ships, they kind of go boom as soon as they're launched. So the Draconians have no ships, no fighters to speak of to send to battle. Anyway, so Twiki and Theopolis kind of stow away, and they've been sort of sneaking around the Draconian ship as well. They run into Captain Buck Rogers, but before they can leave, there's still one final threat that has to be dealt with.
Yes. It is Tigerman.
Yes, after spending nearly an hour and a half, well, actually, no, make that 2 hours, standing in the shadows, looking horribly menacing.
Not saying or doing anything.
Yes, exactly. You finally have the fight to end all fights. And it's a pretty good battle. It's an okay fight. I was kind of expecting a little more myself, mostly because, like, at the very end of the fight, after throwing, a few punches and getting kind of knocked down, realizing he's horribly outmatched, Buck Rogers decides to do the only noble thing and play dirty. And He does so by taking one of those lovely missiles that he's been stuffing into the tailpipes of the enemy ships. Yes, he decides to grab one and stuff it down the tracks. There's a Tigerman. It goes off. It explodes. He dies.
Because those missiles, apparently, they're not so sensitive that they're going to blow up in the tailpipes, but they are sensitive enough that they're going to blow up once down someone's pants.
Yes. And oddly enough, in spite of it being an incredibly volatile missile, if you just kick someone down a hallway or off into a convenient corner and it explodes, well, you emerge without a scratch.
Yes, it's a very condensed explosion.
Very, very contained.
Very contained explosion.
Very convenient.
No one except for the person wearing the missile is hurt.
Exactly. By the by, in the television version of the series, that scene was actually cut out of the movie because if you've watched the television show Buck Rogers, you would know that the character Tigerman actually returns and is in quite a number of episodes. So yeah, they cut that out of the television version of the movie to obviously cover up the fact, or not cover up the fact, but to basically make it so that the character could return as Tigerman in future episodes.
See, my theory on that, dear, is that Tigerman, once he was far enough away from Buck, managed to actually pull said missile out of his trousers. And since it's such a condensed explosion, he was able to throw it like 5 feet away from him and still come out of it pretty much unscathed. That's my theory.
That's a very good theory. I have one of my own because, of course, that explanation was the one that was given by Wikipedia. My personal explanation is they had the fight. He got the bombs stuffed in his trousers. It blew up in his trousers, but you know what? It didn't even faze him because he's freaking Tigerman.
He's Tigerman.
Tiger. Love that Tiger.
Won't destroy him.
Yeah. Ooh, love that guy.
Tigerman is defeated.
Tigerman's defeated, and then, at that point, it's your typical, science fiction space opera victory plotline. The ships blow up. Human fighters, they decide not to go to computer AI because, human reflexes are far more trustworthy. The Earth Defense Forces, they managed to blow up the Draconian warship. Ardala and Kane manage to escape.
They vow their revenge.
Vowing vengeance.
Yes.
And yes, of course, our heroes are able to get into a ship and they escape just in time as the Draconian warship explodes in a dazzling ball of flame. And then there's some witty banter between Captain Rogers and Wilma Deering, and we cut to spaceships flying back to Earth. End scene, end of episode.
End movie.
There you go. Well, and then of course, after that you have, the rehash of the opening theme.
It's the remix, because it's not the exact same opening theme.
Not quite.
It's just a little bit different.
It's very close, though.
It's very close. So it's a remix of the opening credit sequence, the opening music.
And there you go. That is Buck Rogers' first episode, The Awakening, parts 1 and 2. So, did you like this episode?
This episode is very fun. The special effects definitely, they're from the 1970s, so it's really hard to say that they held up today, to today's standards. The episode, however, is fun. It is very, very much your typical space opera where, you've got the very distinct bad guy and your very distinct hero who has to come in and save the day, and then you just kind of fill in the blanks somewhere in between the two. So it was very fun. I enjoyed watching this one. It did feel long, but that's just because when we were watching it as 2 different episodes in one shot.
And so, we were watching the feature-length movie presentation.
Yes.
So, I have to say I like this as well. I'll confess I have a lot of nostalgia for this particular show. I watched it on occasion when I was a kid. Absolutely loved it. And, I'll say that nostalgia definitely carries over through the years, for me at least. Love the characters, love Tweaky, obviously, Tigerman. I just like the overall, just the innocence of the show, really. These shows, again, much like Battlestar Galactica, were meant to not necessarily copy Star Wars, blow for blow, but I think they definitely did succeed in kind of capturing sort of the innocent fantasy that was found in science fiction, especially in the late 70s.
It felt new because it was a new approach from the Star Wars.
Star Wars turned everything on its head, and shows like this were just kind of very natural offshoots. Yes, it's very dated in some regards.
But it is fun to watch. It does have a fun storyline.
And being from the same executive producer as Battlestar Galactica, all of the sound effects for the show were ripped, basically they were from Battlestar Galactica, plain and simple sound effects. And also the ships that they actually used in the Buck Rogers series were the ship design was a rejected model for the Viper fighters from Battlestar Galactica. So a lot of similarities there that kind of tie the two together. But to kind of sum everything up, I like this show. This is one of those rare shows where it's like you get it off the shelf, you watch it, you put it away for a few years, you conveniently forget about a whole lot of stuff, and then you just come back to it when you feel like it.
Mm-hmm. But it's worth having around so that you can pull it out when you do feel like something fun and goofy and campy all in one.
Exactly. And I think with that, we have reached the end of this first episode. So hope you have enjoyed listening to it, and we hope that you will continue listening as we put these podcast episodes out.
Yes, tune in next time. We have fun sharing our goofy passions with you.
Yeah. So everyone out there, again, hope you've enjoyed listening, and we will talk to you later.
Yes. Safe travels.